Kung Lao. One of the coolest characters ever introduced in the Mortal Kombat games, he's also one of the most underused. This is standard fare for a fighting game franchise that has to juggle a roster of about 100 characters, and there are obviously other characters that have had it way worse than Mr. Lao, but what makes this particular missed opportunity so egregious is the rich potential that this character's backstory provides. Potential that, as of yet, has been squandered in most of the games. Kung Lao is a Shaolin monk, just like his more famous counterpart Liu Kang. Liu Kang who defeated Shang Tsung, Liu Kang who defeated Goro, Shao Kahn, Shinnok, and went on to become a demigod in the newest games. Blatant favoritism aside, there's a good and bad part to this. The good part is it sets up the dynamic between Liu and Lao quite nicely. One gets all the glory, the other one gets to watch, which is an interesting thing to explore. The bad part is, it's never explored. Not really. Kung Lao complains about it a tiny bit in MK9, but it doesn't go anywhere. He's always shafted in the games. He's just kinda along for the ride in the first 3. He gets admittedly a pretty cool ending in 4, then dies and dies again in Deadly Alliance and Armageddon. Canonically anyway. But no amount of midway mistreatment quite compares to the raw, savage trolling that NRS unleashed on this character. Unceremoniously killed in MK9, pretty much sits on the bench for MKX even though he has this cool redesign that's never used in the story mode because he's dead the whole time, then gets offed in MK11
twice.
In the movie adaptations, it's even worse. He's either not there and his entire legacy is given to Liu Kang, or he gets Kotal Khan levels of disrespect. If NRS were Jada Pinkett, Kung Lao would be Will Smith. Okay, now that we got the reasoning out of the way, let me show you how to turn this character into the OP, god-smacking badass that he should be. Quick bit of backstory for those not in the know. Many centuries ago, during one of the earlier Mortal Kombat tournaments, the then champion of Earthrealm, a Shaolin monk named Kung Lao, was defeated and killed by Prince Goro of Outworld, prompting Earth's most alarming losing streak and just making everyone sad. Because Kung Lao was the picture-perfect warrior, everything a great monk and fighter could aspire to be. That's why in time he came to be remembered as the Great Kung Lao, and to differentiate him from his descendant of the same name. Confusing. From here on out, I'm gonna be spitballing a bunch of ideas about this character, every now and then contrasting that to his actual history, melding together fact with fantasy. As his last living descendant, the current Kung Lao, at least my version of him, spent his entire life training for this fight, this one tournament that would not only pit him against Prince Goro, his ancestor's killer, but would also decide the fate of Earthrealm itself. To add to the pressure, I like the idea of current-day Lao being part of some big-shot Chinese family that revere old man Kung Lao and have spent generations trying to keep his flame alive, culminating in them pinning all their hopes and dreams on poor young Zoomer Lao, who never really had a normal childhood because of it. Kinda like Tao Ren from Shaman King. Anyone remember that one? Just me? Okay. Everything was work, 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 training and more training. No time to properly go through puberty. Let's go, let's move it. See this guy? He killed your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. Get angry! Poor Zoomer Lao probably had a panic attack every time he saw multi-armed dancing on TV. TV? Who said you had time for TV? Back to training! Oh, and let's get one thing straight before I continue. Liu Kang is not a descendant of the great Kung Lao. He never was. As mentioned by the horse's mouth, this inaccuracy started with the original Mortal Kombat movie where Kung Lao and Liu Kang were basically amalgamated into one character, and thus Kang is the descendant of the GKL in that interpretation, and any subsequent material that took this and ran with it created nothing but confusion in the process. Kung Lao is the descendant, not Liu Kang. See, it makes sense because they have the same name. He had one job to do. This is important for Kung Lao's development and to differentiate between the two characters. Liu is an anomaly, a prodigy. That's the whole point of his character, while Lao is burdened with the terrible weight of legacy and expectations, not just from his family and masters, but from himself, and distinguishes himself through a metric ton of hard work and perseverance, and fashion sense. And since we're hovering around the issue, there's a bit of a debate going on as to how powerful Kung Lao should be, specifically compared to Liu Kang, with some thinking he should be be way more powerful than portrayed, and others thinking he should remain nothing more than a plucky sidekick. In my view, Kung Lao should absolutely be more powerful, and I'm confident that by the end of this thesis, I'll have convinced at least some of you why that makes sense narratively. To me, it's kind of a moot point. It's like asking who's stronger, Aragorn or Boromir. They're both fucking strong, okay? It doesn't matter who would win in a fight, because they're both in the same league, except Aragorn gets all the glory and Boromir gets to eat shit. But at least in The Lord of the Rings, Boromir got to showcase how much of a badass he was before he died. There are two ways that Kung Lao can be portrayed, two ways in which he has been portrayed over the years. He can either be humble or cocky, emotional or in control of his emotions. In the original timeline, he's the one who was initially chosen to represent Earthrealm in the Mortal Kombat tournament, but he refuses the call because he doesn't want the life of a champion. That's what leads to Liu Kang stepping up and becoming the star. That same Kung Lao reluctantly partakes in subsequent events to save Earthrealm, even though all he wants is to live a peaceful life, as you'd expect a monk to want to do. At one point, he even fakes his death to achieve this. He doesn't brag or feel slighted, his abilities are never called into question, and he's more of a mysterious character than anything else. That's one Kung Lao. The other Kung Lao appears from Shaolin monks onwards and is the complete opposite of what I just described. He's cocky, emotional, feels insecure and slighted by his superiors, cracks wise, and always resentfully plays second fiddle to Liu Kang, who more or less takes over as the stoic, wholesome, honorable type. I like a combined approach to give him more depth. My version of Kung Lao starts out resembling the traditionally humble Shaolin monk, while Liu Kang is rumored to be a bit of a rebel and a renegade, kinda like in the 95 movie. He doesn't cut his hair like the rest of the monks, he doesn't respect all of their traditions, he takes leaves of absence from the temple, etc. This whole dynamic then gets flipped on its head when, after getting to know the characters a little better, we realize that Liu is actually a very humble, peaceful, selfless guy, while Lao is secretly bitter and jealous of his comrade. Liu Kang seems to get a lot of freebies and amendments that he doesn't. More importantly, he does not belong to any great family or has any famous genes in him, yet is so much more ridiculously talented than Lao and probably the better fighter, and, to rub it in, is so wholesome and humble about it too. On the surface, Lao tries to match all of this with his own talent, hard work and good behavior, but underneath he can't help but think,
"Go yourself."
Still, Kung Lao is determined to work as hard as he needs to catch up to Liu Kang and become the best. His honor, his family name, his legacy, all depend on it. But fate had other plans, because then, to top it all off and twist the knife further, it is Liu Kang, not Kung Lao, that is chosen to represent Earthrealm in the Mortal Kombat tournament. Lao is crushed. His hopes of coming face to face with his ancestors' killer are dashed. His entire life seems to have been for nothing. This is really the only reason to write a character and bother to give them a backstory, goals, and wishes, so that you can then challenge all of that and thus see what that character is made of. This is why characters like Batman, Spider-Man, Aragorn, Frodo, Zuko, Luke Skywalker, and Anakin Skywalker are so compelling. So what does Kung Lao do? He signs himself up for the tournament independently against the Shaolin's wishes. He mows through many Outworld warriors using not just his skills but his brains as well, whereas Liu Kang mostly just liquidates opponents with raw talent. It might also be a good idea narratively to have the two monks argue about who should face Goro, an argument where all of Kung Lao's bottled up frustrations bubble to the surface, and he finally turns from the stoic monk into the snarkier, more confrontational version of himself, spewing some venom at Liu Kang about how everything was handed to him on a silver platter, and Liu retorting that it's not the hand that Kung Lao was dealt that's the problem, but Kung Lao himself and how he chose to react to it, unwittingly pushing Lao's buttons and making him furious to the point where the two almost fight, but get ambushed by some Outworld assassins before they do. Lao has trouble defending himself and almost gets killed until Liu Kang saves him, having beaten most of the assassins handily on his own. This was the final nail in the coffin, the ultimate counter-argument that Kung Lao could not defend against. Liu Kang was just better, and so in a wholesome moment of character growth, Kung Lao gives up his dream and lets Liu Kang fight Goro in his stead. Liu Kang accepts his blessing and points out that Lao only needed help during the fight because he was conflicted and full of turmoil, which, in typical typical Liu Kang fashion, is both true and annoys Kung Lao to no end, causing some more snarky but this time well-intended banter between the two. After the Shaolin duo leaves, it's revealed that Raiden was watching everything from the sidelines and decided to just not intervene and let the two hash it out. Kung Lao learned to separate doing what is necessary from his pride, which is an important lesson and a crucial bit of character development for him. But the story doesn't end here, because right before he could face Goro in Mortal Kombat, Liu Kang is beset by another assassin, this time a much more dangerous one, probably Reptile. That seems appropriate considering he was this mysterious character in the original Mortal Kombat game and a very difficult character to beat. And it's also a callback to the same confrontation near the end of the original movie. Anyway, unlike the game or the movie, Reptile kinda bodies Liu Kang here. Neither one manages to kill the other, but Liu gets pretty banged up and barely keeps himself alive until Raiden finally realizes what's going on and stops the fight. He arrives in the nick of time and just stares at Reptile with killing intent, prompting the Zaterran warrior's immediate retreat. The long-awaited match is about to start, but Liu Kang is in no condition to fight. Thus, it falls on Kung Lao to face Goro, not because he desperately wants to, but because it is what is required of him. Big difference. With a solemn look in his eyes, he finally understands his fate and steps into the ring to meet his ancestor's killer, a creature that up to this point has been painted as the dumb brute that both Mortal Kombat movies have depicted him as. That's what Kung Lao was expecting to meet. Yet when Goro finally shows himself, he humbles Lao. Despite his fearsome size and otherworldly features, he is quite well-spoken, polite, and talks of honor and tradition, a far cry from the savage monster that Kung Lao had depicted in his head all these years. Goro remembers his fight against Kung Lao's ancestor and commends the Great One's courage, skill, and sense of honor, bemoaning his death as a great loss to the realms. They also speak of mercy and how Goro's culture does not recognize that trait as a virtue, but that he's nevertheless come to understand and admire warriors like the great Kung Lao for possessing it. Nevertheless, he is bound by his own traditions and must do right by his people who do not appreciate such things to the same degree as him. Kung Lao boils up again. Once more, reality is so very different compared to his expectations. In fact, the person that Goro most reminds Kung Lao of is himself. His emotions stir up in him again as his mind barely registers the all-too-familiar word echoed throughout the entire arena.
Fight!
Kung Lao is stuck in his own head for the first half of the fight, just barely keeping out of Goro's reach, but also taking some serious hits. His mind is loud with 1,000 thoughts.
Too many mind. Mind the people what? Mind the enemy. Too many mind.
His eyes dart around from place to place until they finally meet Liu Kang's, who was watching from the sidelines. During that brief exchange, he remembered Liu Kang's earlier remark, and it all instantly clicked.
No mind.
Kung Lao had learned his final lesson. Accept help. You needn't do everything alone. Accept the help of others and share your burden when necessary. The ensuing second half of the battle was brutal, but in the end, Kung Lao triumphed. And even though Shang Tsung, the crowd, even his own adrenaline-fueled mind screamed, "Finish him," Kung Lao chose mercy, as he knew his forefather would have. Once again, Kung Lao gets to his destination, but not in the way he expected. This time, it is Prince Goro who is humbled. Not only does Kung Lao defeat Goro, keep Earthrealm from forfeiting the tournament, and honor his family and ancestors, but sparing Goro also eventually leads to the prince abandoning Shao Kahn and forging an alliance with Kitana a few games later. That's how much of a baller move this is, and it makes Kung Lao that much more of a badass. His arc is now complete. For the initial story at least. This time it's him who's too banged up to continue, so Liu Kang tags back in after getting healed by Raiden and the others and brings it home by defeating Shang Tsung, probably a day or at least a few hours later to make the timetable more realistic. This is Kung Lao. Kung Lao is Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender, not in terms of status or powers or function in the story, but in terms of the kind of journey the character goes through, cause Zuko is the firstborn prince of a nation who gets passed over from the line of succession, just like Kung Lao gets passed over from participating in the tournament in favor of Liu Kang. Zuko also has a sibling that's much more talented and favored than him, just like Kung Lao has a more talented, favored fellow monk. He struggles to achieve his goals, is always one step behind, everything just keeps exploding in his face, and when he finally gets what he wants, he realizes it's not what he needs. And it's not that Zuko isn't powerful. By the end of that show, he's an extremely powerful firebender that's actually able to beat his more competent sister, but he has to work more to get to that power, just like Kung Lao does. And honestly, to me, this makes Kung Lao even greater than Liu Kang in a way, because it's one thing to become successful as a gifted person, but to make it as a not particularly gifted person, that takes far more discipline and is thus far more impressive and leads to far more growth. And all of this is reflected in the special moves and abilities that these characters use. Liu and Lao's level of talent is reflected not just in their level of mastery over their respective elements, but also the elements of their choice. Air can be a deadly element, but is also the most ethereal, whereas fire is a much more intense, overtly dangerous element. And as I said, their respective levels of mastery over their chosen element reflects their level of talent and ingenuity. Kung Lao does not use air or wind as a direct attack. Apart from one or maybe two instances in the games, he can't. So he uses it to enhance other attacks like his dive kicks, tornado spin, and of course, his infamous hat. Meanwhile, Liu Kang has no problem conjuring literal fireballs, and even goes through the trouble of making them look like tiny dragon heads because priorities. Liu Kang is an artist at heart, but he doesn't really do much else with the element, partly because he doesn't need to. The talented kid doesn't need to innovate as much as the less talented kid, and innovation is something that Kung Lao has in spades, because he turned his crutch into his greatest strength. He can use his hat as a cutting tool, a projectile, a setup tool, a shield, a guided missile, a boomerang, and damn near like a second player on the field, and looks stylish as fuck while doing it. Liu Kang may be an artist, but Kung Lao's the fashion guru. Oh, and because people keep asking me, his teleport is obviously not wind related. That makes no sense. His hat is likely enchanted and acts like a portal. I mean, past versions of Kung Lao didn't even use the hat to teleport, so it's obviously a totally random thing, but I do like the idea of the enchanted hat. It is his most prized possession after all. His entire moveset and fighting style is tailored around this one accessory. And one other element that both Shaolin monks use is soul, i.e. they enhance their strength and durability by calling on the power of their inner souls. Kinda like Chi, which goes a long way towards explaining why they're so durable and a cut above most other fighters. Watch my power system video for a more detailed explanation. Needless to say, the sky's the limit from here on out in terms of how you develop this character after the first tournament. This is Kung Lao, a disciplined, dedicated badass who uses hard work and ingenuity to reach the absolute peak of competence, a man who transcends himself and takes his destiny into his own hands, and one who is burdened by great expectations and manages to both honor the past and aim towards the future. The Hattrick of a great warrior.
You're never gonna make it, you're not good enough. There's a million other people with the same stuff. You really think you're different? Man, you must be kidding. Think you're gonna hit it, but you just don't get it. It's impossible, it's not probable, you're irresponsible. Too many obstacles, you gotta stop it, yo. You gotta take it slow, you can't be a pro. No, what's the shot? You're just gonna take that, make them take it all back. Don't tell me you believe that. Are you just gonna take that? Or will you fucking fight back? Fight back.